Every day, 700 million people wake up unsure where their next meal will come from. Or in many cases, if there will be a next meal. The reasons are complex politically and logistically. However, there's one key cause that isn't so complicated. We waste a lot of food. Let's take a carrot, for example. Maybe not. Oh yeah, let's take a carrot, for example. Cut it, peel it, trim off the top, and suddenly over a third of the carrot is waste. Now, you might not want to eat this excess, but it has tremendous value. The tops contain protein and fiber, and the peels contain important antioxidants and carotenoids. And if you're on top of it, you might throw this in the compost pile, but we know it'll usually just end up in the trash. But what if there was a way to harness this value out of this waste without eating a carrot top salad or carrot peel ice cream? This is a power of fermentation. Fermentation is the underappreciated, ugly, smelly genius behind our food system. We all know its role in alcohol, but how about soy sauce, salami, vanilla, and chocolate? These flavors, which form the foundation of our food system, are all the products of fermentation. Think of organisms as tiny factories transforming food through infinitely complex chemical reactions. For over 12,000 years, humans have been using fermentation to make food last longer and taste more delicious. And now with advances in genetic engineering, many of these same organisms are used to produce industrial chemicals, human pharmaceuticals, and even novel foods. But these same techniques can be applied to our carrot to transform the food we waste into the food we need. A couple carrot pieces won't solve world hunger or make food more affordable or sustainable, but applying these approaches to the over 1 billion tons a year of food waste, over a third of all food produced, might. So if we can use organisms to transform our food waste into ingredients we can use, we can reduce our environmental impact and make our food system more resilient. So then, why haven't we? Well, it comes down to two reasons: economics and ideology. I found the solution to this economic problem in a very unlikely place, at a sushi restaurant. I can't eat sushi, especially here in Illinois, without soy sauce, the deeply umami-rich flavor powerhouse. But how do soybeans become transformed from a bland legume into this deeply flavorful sauce? Well, the secret is a white mold called koji, Aspergillus oryzae, originated in China over 3,000 years ago as a way to turn starches into alcohol and brought by trade into Japan. By the 13th century, this organism was being selected and bred by specialized craftspeople, all without the knowledge that they were using an organism at all. This mold became the foundation of Japanese cooking, the powerhouse behind soy sauce, sake, miso, and tons of other fermented foods. What these artisans understood intuitively, that koji converts starches into flavor, we now understand scientifically. Koji produces an extraordinary array of enzymes, specialized proteins that break down complex raw materials, as well as thousands of flavored compounds. What we found in soy sauce and in the koji mold is an incredible tool to perform complex chemical reactions and extractions without harsh chemicals or expensive machinery. Looking at the past also provides a blueprint for applying these organisms to food excess, to food waste. Consider this. For most of human history, throwing food away just wasn't an option. The ability to waste food the way that we do is a relatively recent phenomenon, enabled by global supply chains, refrigeration, and cultures of excess that emerged in the West over the past century. For most of human history, throwing food away just wasn't an option. It was unthinkable. And fermentation wasn't just used for flavor or enjoyment, but as a critical part of the food production process, as a way to utilize the entirety of harvest. The fermentation of cabbage into sauerkraut not only extends shelf life, but enhances antioxidants and vitamin C. The modern reimagination of these techniques has been adopted by chefs in many high-end restaurants as a way to reimagine their food excess, their food waste, and to create novel sensory experiences. Chefs turn apple cores to vinegar, bread ends to a miso, and bent grains to soy sauce. These techniques are a modern reimagination of food waste that's rooted in traditional techniques. They're cool. They demonstrate what's possible. But this is often where conversations about food waste end, with a utopian idea that seems enticing but is disconnected from contemporary realities. The production of vinegar from apple cores or soy sauce from spent grains is fascinating at a restaurant producing hundreds of pounds a year, but completely impractical for a food processor producing thousands of tons a year. The size and complexity of our food system requires us to engineer koji to do more, to go beyond soy sauce. To make upcycling work, we needed to build super koji. Let's take cocoa for an example. Everyone loves chocolate, but 20% of the cocoa bean is husk, a thin, papery layer covering the surface. Cocoa is farmed, harvested, shipped, and then 20% is thrown away. 20% of the human effort, of the economic value is thrown away. And for years, cocoa producers tried to sell cocoa husk as a tea, a faintly chocolatey beverage, but people just preferred regular tea. They sold it as a flour, but regular flour was easier to use. And so the best solution they found was to burn it for heat or put it in the soil. A chocolate producer came to me with a request for help. Cocoa husk was taking over his factory, sacks and sacks of husk covering the floor of his facility. And he knew there must be something valuable inside, but he wasn't sure what. And he was right. There is something valuable, specifically antioxidants, fiber, and oils. But these compounds are bound, hidden inside the husk, and the perfect target for our hero, koji. But in order to allow koji to convert this husk into something that's usable, it needed our help. And by engineering the DNA and protein expression, we gave koji new capabilities. We gave it the tools to transform this husk into sugars, something every chocolate operation needs, and antioxidants in high demand on the open market. By giving koji new tools, we were able to make it behave in novel, transformative ways and turn this issue into a resource and free the factory of these sacks of husk. Even though we gave koji a new capacity and a new capability, the foundation of our work remains rooted in traditional fermentation. We're not redefining fermentation, we're reimagining it and applying it at sizes and to solve problems that our ancestors couldn't have imagined. But there's a larger problem. The idea that food waste is waste. When did we decide that the food system must be linear, that it must go in a straight line from farm to factory to plate to landfill, and that everything produced along the way is excess without any use or value? We've built entire industries around the premise that throwing things away is more economical than utilizing them, that disposing of our waste is better than making use of it. But these aren't natural laws, they're assumptions so deeply embedded that we've stopped questioning them. We accept systems that actively harm us, systems that generate emissions, that fail to feed the hungry. Because we've been doing it this way for so long, we can't imagine doing it any other way. But here's what I've learned. Systems built on contradictions are inherently unstable, and instability means opportunity. Contradictions between what we produce and what we waste, between what we know and what we do, between what's possible and what we've settled for. The tools exist. The knowledge exists. What we need now is the imagination to apply it and the courage to challenge these assumptions which have held us back for so long. So here's my challenge to you. Stop accepting harmful systems just because it's easy. Look for the contradictions in your own work, in your own sector. The contradictions between what we produce and what we waste, between what we know and what we actually do, between what's possible and what we've settled for. This is where the future lives, and it's waiting for someone to see it. Thank you.